So Chandana, should I start or?
Yes, Satish, you can start. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, you want to make an introduction of like just welcoming everybody,
No,
or should
Satish,
I
I
do
think you
that?
can. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar that AEEE is organizing with the support of Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. And the title of the webinar is Fast Tracking EV Adoption in India. Sorry, I think the just title. You have the title. I'm sorry, it's so the title of the webinar is Charging India's 2- and 3-wheeler transport, and it is being organized under the project Fast Tracking EV Adoption in India. What I would do is that I'll make some brief introductory remarks and put things in context, and then I will pass on the baton to my colleague Chandana, who is going to be managing the presentation and the discussions. So, Syamashish, maybe if we can go to the next slide. So just a slide about AEEE. I know that some of you are already aware of the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. AEEE is both an industry association of like energy efficiency companies which have products and services and which want to make energy efficiency mainstreamed in India, and who believe that businesses have a very, very important role to play in creating a culture of energy efficiency in India, working with the policymakers, working with the larger ecosystem. We also are a think tank, so we work on various policy advocacy issues. We conduct studies and research, and most of that comes out through the knowledge products in the form of reports or briefs, and they are pretty much all that is available on our website. Everything is in the public domain, thanks to our funders like Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation and others. So next slide, please. And the idea is that we want to adopt this both policy advocacy as well as market enablement approach through what AEEE calls like a triple sector approach, where we work with private sector, public sector, and the civil society organizations to move the needle on energy efficiency programs, implementation, policy development, and evaluation. So coming to the point related to this seminar, we have been working in the area of e-mobility with the support of Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. And some of you may have already joined us for some of the prior report launches. So I think while today's webinar is exclusively focused on charging infrastructure for electric two-wheelers and three-wheeler fleets in Indian cities, there have been other reports that we have come out, and some of them are mentioned here in terms of charging India's bus transport, charging India's four-wheeler transport, also how the electric mobility space is going to impact the India's electricity retail, and probably also I think the larger wholesale market. And we also have some other projects that are listed here where we are working on the transport space in terms of developing a green vehicle rating for 2- and 3-wheelers. And we are also working in the Himalayan states of Uttarakhand to facilitate possible electrification of public bus fleets. This is a work that we are doing under funding from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also some funding that has been provided by Shakti Foundation. So moving on, Syamashish, if you can go to the next slide. As part of this Shakti initiative, there is one last report that we will be launching, which is the vehicle grid integration. So there is a lot of talk about because there is a lot of like batteries which are an integral component of electric mobility of electric vehicles. So what kind of impacts that can have, either as a storage device or as smart charging infrastructure, to enable, I think, a greening of the India's electric grid using various mechanisms. So that report is going to get launched pretty soon as well. Coming to a topic that we have for today's webinar, for people, I think you are working, these numbers may be not new to them, but what is really striking is that although a lot of focus goes on four-wheelers and buses and public transport vehicles, we just wanted to flag this, that about 83% of all vehicles that are sold in India are two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Also, I think there is a stronger push that we are seeing in terms of adoption of lithium-ion batteries for commercial use cases in this segment. Also, the pace of two-wheeler adoption for the electric two-wheelers is much higher than that of electric four-wheelers. So this market is transforming much more rapidly, and that's the reason I think we are focusing on this. And light electric vehicles do play a central role in achieving shared, connected, and electric mobility in India, which constitutes both two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And then on the right side, you do see, I think, the trend that we are looking in terms of the growth of two-wheelers and three-wheelers as compared to other passenger and commercial vehicles. Next slide. So I think the key takeaway for this is that while a lot of focus, I think, if you look at India's e-mobility initiative, right from FAME to also, I think, what the state's EV policies are focused on, we do believe that proper planning and charging infrastructure for, I think, the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, I think electric vehicles is also going to play a significant role, and it should not be ignored. Next slide. So before I hand over back to Chandana and Shyamashish and to other speakers, I just wanted to highlight that what are the objectives of this piece of research that we have done. So we have done like a pretty comprehensive assessment of what are the vehicle characteristics from the point of view of EV charging. I think that's, of course, the lens that we are using. We are also mapping what are the current charging practices that are being used by commercial fleet providers. And we do have a pretty awesome panel where some of the these commercial fleet providers and other logistics running organizations, and what kind of technology I think they are using, what are their experiences. So we will hear from them. We also wanted to provide some guidance on the establishment of this electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler charging facilities. What are the technologies? What are the pros and cons? So that is also part of the report that we are doing, that we are going to be launching today. And some key contributions, I think, is we are placing this as a ground proofing exercise, where I think future work can be built on top of this work that we have done. So we are putting a spotlight on current vehicle landscape in the LEV segment. We are also highlighting what is the state of play for the charging infrastructure for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, largely in the commercial segment. Then examining of salient approaches that are being considered by the market players, as I talked about. We will hear about that. What are the different types of public charging facilities and what can be their trade-offs? So some of the discussions is going to be focused on that. And then finally, we are going to be we have done some analysis on what are the charging preferences of fleet and energy operators. So I think without much ado, I would hand it over to the people, I think, who can speak on these topics in an informed manner. And I would like to hand it back to my colleagues, Chandana and Shyamashish, and the title of the presentation and the webinar that you just saw. So the live polling, before we get into this, the first question that we want to put in front of the webinar audience, and we would request them to respond in the next 10 to 15 seconds, is that what is the estimated cumulative share of electric two-wheelers and electric three-wheelers in the total EV sales in India? And there are 4 options, and we would request you to pick one of the options that you feel is the best. Okay, Chandana, are we okay or?
Satish, I think we'll give them 10 seconds more. Right.
Sure. I didn't see the response here. Yeah, okay. So I think the predominant response that we are getting is between 71 and 90%. And I'm going to give it back to Chandana to let us know that the right answer is being flashed. So almost like more than 90%, close to 99% is the correct answer. And but I think the audience was pretty much right that the overwhelming portion of the vehicles that are getting sold in India belong to the electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler market. So over to you, Chandana, for taking this forward.
I would request Ruchir Shukla, Director of Electric Mobility Program from Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, to deliver the keynote address. Right. Over to you, Ruchir. Thank you, Satish.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, Ruchir, you are.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to address this August gathering assembled here today to witness the launch of report. This report is really very timely, as we are seeing a lot happening around Make in India. And down the line, we are seeing more and more across EV segments especially. Let me quickly talk about a few lines about Shakti. Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation works to facilitate India's transition to the cleaner energy future by aiding the design and implementation of policies that promote clean power, energy efficiency, sustainable transport, electric vehicle, climate policy, and clean energy finances. Now, we have been seeing two and three wheelers, which are a major part of motorized road transport. Today, approximately 83% of all vehicles in India are, in this segment. And electrification of these light vehicles is recognized as a very low-hanging fruit to achieve the cleaner mobility in India. And based on the market readiness, cost competitiveness, ease of charging, and emission reduction potential, this becomes a very, very important element to address as fast as possible. The estimated sales of e-rickshaws, which were reported around close to 100,000 recently in last year. The growing adoption of this small vehicle segment, which is primarily the electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler, is expected to continue with the right policy elements, focusing on the upfront cost reduction, which we are seeing in the pipeline. There are proposals also to ban the sales of ICE-powered two-wheeler and three-wheeler, especially in next couple of years, 3 to 5 years time frame. The EV sales trend shows that the pace of electric two-wheeler adoption, which we have seen, has been much higher than that of other electric vehicles. So in the overall electric vehicle ecosystem, the smaller vehicle segment is really have a much higher CAGR. The FAME 2 schemes recognize this, and therefore we see a significant budgetary allocation for demand incentives for electric two-wheeler and three-wheelers. According to NITI Aayog estimates, 30% of EV sales penetration is achievable in two and three-wheeler segment by 2030. It is evident that electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler are going to play a very central role, critical role in achieving shared, connected, and electric mobility across India. To support the rapid pace of commercial adoption of two-wheeler and electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheeler, availability of public charging infrastructure is really a critical factor, and that's the main cause of this research report. Achieving on-ground implementation warrants comprehensive planning, which should take account a couple of key questions, which I'm just going to be re-emphasizing. What are the different segments of two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler, and three-wheeler commercial fleets from the perspective of accessing these charging requirements and various electric variants within these electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler? What are the possible ways both the vehicles can be charged? How they are currently being charged? What are the standards which are available? The design consideration which also enables or impact the charging, the infrastructure requirement for setting up charging or the swap facility, how the swapping, how practical alternative it is to the two-wheeler and three-wheeler, and accordingly take that forward. All this put together, what kind of public charging infrastructure will be required for commercial light electric vehicle in Indian cities, both to support individual owners as well as fleet operators. Now, as we see, apart from a few isolated studies that deal with EV charging infrastructure in general, there is a lack of thorough analysis which focuses on the light electric vehicle segment in the Indian context. Considering many of these critical knowledge gaps, researchers at AEEE have carried out a detailed assessment on electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler charging infrastructure and planning in India, which is what is going to be planned for India with the support from Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. The study aims to facilitate the establishment of charging facilities for commercial light electric vehicle. This research has two main objectives: mapping of charging practices associated with both commercial and personal electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler fleets, provide useful guidance for the establishment of electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler charging facilities. The research results can potentially help a range of stakeholders, from the state nodal agencies to energy charge point operators, fleet managers to implementing agencies, and urban development authorities. It is believed that all these stakeholders can find specific and actionable takeaways from this study and potentially use this report as a go-to reference when implementing public charging infrastructure in Indian cities. To conclude, I thank AEEE for organizing this event and an opportunity to explore how India can engage more constructively in EV space and play a very important role in the growth of electric vehicles in India, especially the smaller vehicles. Thank you very much. Over to you for the question. I guess the next is the on polling questions. What we have. How many electric two-wheeler models are available in the Indian market? So over to you, Shamasis, I think.
Yes, Ruchir, I'm sharing the results. Yeah, so the overwhelming response is that there are less than 30. We would like to say that we actually, when we did our research, we found that there are over 72 electric two-wheeler models in the Indian market. So we are quite far away from the truth. Thank you, Ruchir.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So now for this part, we will actually walk you through what are the major findings that we have from our report. Shamasis and I will be walking you through our findings. Whatever questions that you have for us, please put it in the question panel, and we will actually address it in the end of before the panel discussion. So without much ado, we are talking about our 2 and 3 wheeler transport report. We are actually quite glad that some of the people who we had reached out to as stakeholders during the consultation for this research report are actually joining us as panelists, so that you can hear what they also think at the end of this session. Shamasis, can we move on to the next slide? So continuing from the context setting that was done by Satish, I will be walking you through the characteristics, the charging methods, what are the findings that we had when we looked at the E2W and 3W models based on the charging, as well as we'll also talk about battery swapping, which is very relevant to this segment. Next slide, Shamasis. So the questions that we are trying to answer in this portion of the session is like, what are the important design related aspects for electric 2 and 3 wheelers, which will have an impact on their charging? Which would definitely deal with the battery as well as the battery configuration, which you will see in the upcoming slides. We will talk about what kind of ways are there to charge the electric 2 and 3 wheelers and how they are actually being charged right now in India. We talk about the standards that are associated with 2 and 3 wheeler charging and what is happening in the industry. With respect to that, we'll also try to answer this important question of battery swapping and try to see if it's an alternative that is practical for all vehicles. And finally, we'll try to look at what kind of charging infrastructure will be needed in our Indian cities for supporting the electric 2 and 3 wheeler commercial adoption. And as far as the beneficiaries of this report go, you can see that we have identified almost all section of stakeholder that are relevant for our EV ecosystem, and it includes OEMs to the central and state nodal agencies, as well as the policymakers and the DISCOMs. Next slide, Shamasis. So I would like to acknowledge Anirudh Ray, who is a researcher who had supported this work, and he's the person who has done this work that I'm presenting in front of you, this categorization of the 2 and 3 wheeler segments into different categories. If we were to look at the 2 and 3 wheeler commercial fleets, you can see that there are two types of fleets. One is a passenger carrying fleet and the other one is a goods carrying fleet. So with examples, just to let you know what the fleets are. Shamasis, can you just click once? Yes. So we have bike taxi fleets, which could be like the Ola bike, Uber Moto, and Rapido, which are already functional. The bike rental fleet, which are a little bit more flexible than the bike taxi fleets. This could be Bounce, DriveC, or Bogo. We also have the feeder transport fleets, which will provide in the last mile transport connectivity, which is the Yulu, Mobisi, and Mobike, which many of us are familiar with. And finally, when you look at the goods segment, we will have these courier fleets which operate mostly in a hub and spoke model. This will be Delivery, Kojavas, or Ecom Express as an example. And food and grocery fleets, we will have Grofers, Zomato, and DOT, who is actually already joining us on the panel today. Next, in a similar perspective, if you were to look at the three-wheeler commercial fleets, we can see that there are passenger fleets as well as goods fleets. So we can put them in two boxes. One is a paratransit fleet, as well as similar to the two-wheeler, a feeder transport fleet, which will provide the last mile connectivity. So in this case, we need to remember that there are two segments, which are the e-autos as well as the e-rickshaws, which will provide this service. Similarly, when you look at the goods fleet, you will have two types of fleets, which is the courier fleets as well as the grocery delivery fleets. All right. So examples of these fleets are also presented. Ola Auto, Uber Auto could be the paratransit fleet. Smarty, which is operational Delhi NCR region, could be an example of a feeder transport fleet. And in courier, you have a lot of players, including Euler Logistics and Delhi. And in grocery, we have Grofers and Big Basket and even DOT who are operational in this segment. Okay. Next slide. So finally, what I want to say that the operation of commercial and electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler fleets, there is a lot of difference. As you can see how we have tried to capture it in this slide. And there is what we understood is like we really have to study the characteristics of this fleet while we decide on the charging for aspects for them, as you will see in the subsequent slides. Yes, Ashish, next slide. So this would be something that I think everybody will be interested in. So what is the battery capacity for the electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers that we are seeing? So we did study around 72 electric two-wheeler models which have lithium-ion batteries which are available in the Indian market or are going to come in the market soon. And we have also studied roughly around 30 electric three-wheeler models which have lithium-ion batteries. And what we are finding is that if I look at two-wheelers, typically the battery capacity would be somewhere between 1.2 and 2.2 kilowatt, as you can see in the slide here. But we are also acknowledging the fact that there are electric two-wheeler models that are coming in the market or has come to the market already, which have significantly high batteries, and the highest among them is a 9.7 kilowatt battery, which is maybe equivalent to a smaller car. Now to go through the three-wheeler batteries. So we will first look at the passenger models. As you know, we have electric rickshaws as well as electric autos. So for the electric rickshaws, what we typically see is that the battery is between 3.7 to 5.4 kilowatt, as you can actually see in this. And for all the e-auto models we studied, we can see that their upper range is somewhere at 7.4 kilowatt, and the lower end is somewhere around 4.6 kilowatt. So the conclusion is that definitely, as you would expect it, the e-autos have slightly bigger batteries than the e-rickshaws. Now you look at the cargo counterparts. So you have an e-cart, which is a cargo version of the e-rickshaw, and you have this e-cargo vehicle, which is the goods carrying version of your e-auto. Therein, what we see is that the e-carts will have a battery capacity between maybe 4.3 to 5 is what we have seen when we did our analysis. And for the three-wheeler auto logistics model, which is the e-cargo, the battery capacity could be anywhere between 6 to 8, as you can see in the slide. So what are we concluding from this? So you can definitely make a call on where the battery capacity of the e-two-wheelers is. But when you look at the e-three-wheeler models, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that there is a difference between the e-auto and the e-rickshaw. And we should be also cognizant of the fact that based on their application, be it passenger or goods, there is actually a difference. We did not find much difference between the e-two-wheeler passenger models and the logistics models, but we should also say that there are very few models of e-two-wheelers which are designed particularly for the logistic application. Yes, Shyamlashish, next slide. So one thing that we should look at is like, what is the voltage of these batteries for the e-two-wheelers that we saw? So why is this relevant also is something we will explain, because if you have to design a charger, you have to design a charger based on the battery voltage. So what we are seeing is that like there are batteries which have 48 volt, 60 volt as well as 72 volt that is available in the market. And some manufacturers, we could not find what is the battery voltage in their spec sheet. So we have put them as not available. But we are very cognizant of the fact that it is not just 48 volt that is applicable for all electric two-wheelers. Shyamlashish, yeah, on. So when we looked at the E3W models also, since this is not a parameter that is commonly said by all the manufacturers, but even there we found that 48 volt, as you can see, is a common voltage that we are also acknowledging. But we also found that there are some electric three-wheelers, which also has 60-volt batteries. And some of the manufacturers, we could not find the battery voltage in their specification sheet, which we have also presented. So why is this important? It is actually because like the current, if you look at the current guidelines for which is surrounding electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, you can actually see that they have specified 48 volt as the output voltage for the chargers that we need to design for e-two-wheelers and three-wheelers. We need to acknowledge this fact that we have battery packs other than the 48 volt voltage. The 48 volt might be a legacy issue which came from because we are experiencing a transition from the lead acid to lithium ion fleet, but we need to be very cognizant of the fact that there are other battery voltages also, and when we are developing standards, we need to consider that these voltages also exist, and their chargers needs to be custom designed for these charging voltages other than 48 volt also. Next slide, Shamshish. So another important factor that we need to look at is how is the battery? Is the battery a fixed battery, or is the battery actually detachable from the vehicle? Why is this relevant? If you have a detachable battery, then actually only have a possibility of charging the battery outside the vehicle, which is quite relevant to this segment because these are vehicles which does not have any active thermal management mechanisms in them. So when we looked at the electric two-wheeler models, what we are finding is that the bulk of the market actually has E2W models which have detachable batteries. The same when we are applying to electric three-wheelers. Tamashish, can you click? Yeah, we are also seeing that is a kind of a similar approach that you have. As you can see that most of the players, they are also welcoming this presence of having a detachable battery, which allows us the ability to actually charge the battery outside the vehicle and thereby facilitating swapping. So to conclude, what we need to say is that even if your vehicle actually has a detachable battery, you can still charge the battery inside the vehicle. What we need to understand is that having a detachable battery does not remove an option, of plugging charging from you. It implies that you can either charge the battery inside the vehicle, but then you actually have an additional possibility to charge the battery outside the vehicle. But then if you have a detachable battery, you get this additional possibility by that you can charge the battery outside the vehicle, and this will also facilitate swapping, as I'm going to explain in my next slide. Next slide, Shamsi. So first option that we have is how do we charge the battery inside the vehicle? As I explained earlier, this can be a fixed or a detachable battery. So what kind of a charging block do you need? You can have either a fixed block or you can have a portable kind of a block, which is most common in the e-two-wheelers and three-wheelers right now. So both fixed and detachable batteries definitely can be charged inside. And one thing that we need to be cognizant is of the fact that there are advanced programmable chargers and simpler non-programmable chargers that are available in the market right now. These non-programmable chargers might have a simple time-based control, which would stop the charging at the end of the day. But as lithium-ion batteries are quite smart batteries, which need smarter controls to monitor their health, as well as their life. So one of the best ways that we can actually treat our batteries better is if we would adopt programmable chargers, which might have the CCCV control, which also enables faster charging during a certain period and then come back to a slower charging. So this is one portion that we need to be very cognizant of. And when you looked at the fixed kind of chargers that are available, this could be AC or DC chargers, and which could be off-board or on-board of the vehicle. And on-board chargers are quite less, as we have seen, and which we will also read in our report. If you look at battery swapping, you have two possibilities. One is you take out the battery and you charge it individually. This can be done with the help of a portable charger, which pretty much looks like a bigger extended version of our laptop charger, or you can actually charge it in a stack battery charging solution, which is something that is commercially used by a lot of these battery swapping service providers. that is available. When we say battery swapping in the context of this report, we are talking about both operation, that is actually the charging of the battery as well as providing the swapping service. And you can see that how the stacked battery unit and the individual battery unit differs is that an individual battery unit may not cater to just one battery. This will allow us setting up of decentralized swapping facilities, as we will see later in that. And typically a stacked battery unit could charge anywhere between 50 to 20 batteries, and the specs that you are seeing in front of you is for a 20 battery charging stacked battery unit that is available in the market. More details are actually there in the report. Yes, Ramashish, next slide. Now, one of the most important things that we need to talk about is actually about what are the charging standards for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. These are a very distinct category of electric vehicles. And since we are in India, actually DHI is one of the organizations which has taken lead, and we did make our own standards, which is the Bharat AC and Bharat DC standard in 2017, which are also applicable for electric two-wheelers and electric three-wheelers also. And you can see that these standards, although they are applicable for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, when we actually talked to the stakeholders and we looked at the market, we found that the commercial adoption for these two charging standards, chargers based on these two charging standards are quite limited in both cases. And so this is one factor that we need to be cognizant of when we move forward. Going to the next section. So Bureau of Indian Standards is our major charging standard meeting agency, as you are all aware of. They have a committee which is developing charging standards for the light electric vehicles also. They are developing charging standards for not just AC, also for the DC charging for light electric vehicles, as well as they are also formulating charging standards for battery swapping. But one thing that we need to be cognizant of is this fact that typically, as Indian standards are developed from the existing international standards, the delay in international standards is a factor that has resulted in the delay of standards that is being developed at the BIS also. And the third agency that is very popular and taking a lot of initiative in the charging standards of India is the Department of Science and Technology. They are actually spearheading a campaign called Normal Charging Standard Initiative. AAA is very proud to be associated with it. And the intent of this program is to be able to create cost-effective charging infrastructure without compromising on the communication or safety standards for electric two and three-wheelers. We are trying to make solutions for India which are suited to Indian conditions and Indian electric two and three-wheelers. And one of the charging standards that has already been developed or in the advanced stage is actually the low power AC charging points suitable for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Yes, Ramashish, next slide. So one question that will be there in your minds that you would be expecting us to answer is the factor about battery swapping. So when we look at the swapping for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, this kind of swapping is a manual or an assisted swapping facility which does not require much automation. And when we look at that, the most important aspect of it is the weight of the battery pack. As you know, the weight of the battery pack depends on the battery capacity as well as the energy density of the battery pack. On our end, we did some analysis on what is the energy density that is available for the electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers that are in market. Ramashish, can you click? So when we looked at all the models for which the data is available for the energy density, this is from the FAME2 website. What we are seeing is that based on the vehicles that are being approved by FAME2 in India, we see that the electric two-wheeler models have a slightly higher battery capacity, battery energy density, as you can see in the image in front of you, than the electric three-wheeler models. So, and the FAME guidelines, if you see what is the minimum threshold for eligibility of demand incentive is somewhere around 70 whatever per kg. But what we are seeing in the market is that the two-wheeler models have much denser batteries than the electric three-wheeler segment. how does that translate to actually weight from a KWH segment? Just to give you a thumb rule, Shamashish, can you click? Yeah. So if I were to calculate what is the weight of a 2 kilowatt-hour electric two-wheeler battery, based on the limits that we are using, the limits as 175 and 225, which you can actually see from the box plot in front of you. It would mean that a 2 kilowatt-hour electric two-wheeler battery would vary between 8.8 to 11.4 kilogram in weight. And since for the batteries that we are seeing right now, for the electric three-wheelers, the energy density is a little less. So for that, if I make the calculation based on the limits of the box plot, just as I did in the case of the electric two-wheelers, what we are seeing is that a 3 kilowatt-hour battery for electric rickshaws would weigh between 20 to 30 kilogram, and a 5 kilowatt-hour battery for goods carrier will weigh between 33 to 50 kilogram. And this is not something that can be easily handled when we want to consider swapping. So one of this recommendation, and what we are actually also seeing in this field, is that we could split this battery pack into multiple handleable battery packs of weights which can be easily carried by a person. So that would actually support the adoption of swapping, particularly in the E3W segment. That is what we are seeing. So this is where I would end my presentation. But before I go, I think we have a poll. So I'm going to post the polling question in front of you. So this is the question. According to you, which charging method will see greater uptake in the electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler market in near future? I'm sharing the results with you now. The results actually show that a larger set of the audience prefers that both options will be available. Both options will be applicable for the electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Yeah, I'm going to request Shamashish to continue the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Chandana. Am I audible? So,
Shamashish, you're audible.
okay, great. Thank you. So good morning to everyone. In next 15 odd minutes, I am going to discuss the current charging practices we have observed and some key insights from the multi-criteria assessment and stakeholder feedback. So this is a snapshot of the present charging practices in the electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheeler market in India. So we see that due to the inherent flexibility in charging of these light electric vehicles, we find that the market players have been testing out unique charging methods, and such methods influence the choice of charging technology. Our report highlights these different approaches through case studies on the current charging or swapping practices. It is also worthwhile to mention that we find that an OEM or a fleet operator often plays the additional role of providing charging services for its vehicles and sometimes for other vehicles as well. From the case studies on the commercial passenger two-wheeler fleet charging, we find that all of them have opted for decentralized charging options to charge their vehicles, where they have set up either two-wheeler chargers or individual battery swapping kiosks. A key reason for this could be to cover the relatively large catchment area of passenger two-wheeler transport. To put it in a perspective, unlike most passenger three-wheelers, two-wheelers are used in taxi fleets and/or rental, which Chandana mentioned in one of her slides. Both the bike taxi and bike rental segments do not follow fixed routes and have considerably large areas of operation. So the charging requirement of these electric two-wheelers is not locally concentrated, and hence a centralized charging system is not found to be suitable for these fleets. Apart from the operation model of an electric two-wheeler fleet, the high cost of space rental for a centralized charging facility in a city is a key factor causing companies to choose decentralized charging systems, and also it is a major driver for partnering with shops or Kinara shops where space can be shared and the rental cost can be avoided. Minimizing vehicle downtime is also an important consideration. Hence, because of the space and time constraints in managing the two-wheeler charging, these fleet operators are found to set up individual battery swapping facilities. In the logistics segment, DOT is a fleet operator that has set up centralized captive EV charging facilities for its fleet. This is different from the decentralized pattern observed in the case of passenger two-wheeler charging. This could be attributed to the fact that the vehicle movement in logistics operations follows a hub and spoke model. In such a case, after making a number of trips, the EVs come back to the warehouse and the fleet operator uses the idle time of the two-wheelers for recharging. So this makes central captive charging facilities effective as they are generally housed in the warehouses. So no need for additional space, and idle time in fleet operation matches the time requirement for plug-in charging. Furthermore, these warehouses have electricity connections with adequate sanctioned demand, which is sufficient to meet the charging load. Also would like to mention that DOT has three-wheelers also in its logistics fleet, which are charged in the same way. In contrast, Gaia Motor Works has relied on captive stack battery swapping to meet the charging requirement of its three-wheeler logistics fleet. As these vehicles can be conveniently charged at one place, that is a warehouse, the fleet operator has chosen the stack battery option instead of individual battery swapping. So we see that there is a clear similarity in the charging practices of all the logistics fleet operators, which is central charging places, usually at warehouses, instead of distributed charging systems, which are common actually in the case of passenger light electric vehicles. However, the charging technologies used by these logistics fleet operators differ. Some have opted for plug-in vehicle charging, whereas others have adopted battery swapping method. The choice depends on the logistics fleet operation characteristics, we believe. So when idle vehicle time at a warehouse can accommodate plug-in charging, this solution is employed. And in cases where fleet operators cannot afford such downtime, we find stack battery swapping is preferred. In the case of passenger three-wheeler fleets, there is a greater preference for battery swapping. So Lithium Power, which provides charging services to passenger three-wheelers primarily, as well as logistics vehicles, has opted for stack battery swapping. Similarly, we find that Ola Electric is also testing out stack battery swapping facility for passenger three-wheeler fleets. So in a nutshell, one can conclude that the choice of charging method depends entirely on the charging service provider's business model and or the fleet's operational characteristics. So and also we find that both the business model and the fleet's operational characteristics are kind of they vary a lot. Hence, a one-size-fits-all approach to identifying the most suitable charging method we find is not appropriate. However, based on the different charging practices currently followed in the light electric vehicle segment, we have identified 5 salient types of public charging facilities. So these are the 5 possible types of public charging facilities we have identified during our research. So one is the individual EV charging facility, which is in short IEV, then individual battery swapping facility, IBS, multiple EV charging facility, MEV, stacked battery swapping facility, SBS, and lastly, battery swapping only facility, BS. So I will go into the details, but let's try to remember the abbreviations, because I will be using these abbreviations a lot actually in the coming slides. So we see that IEV caters to the charging needs of one EV at a time. So this kind of facility can be set up anywhere on the side of a road where an EV can be parked and charged. Any commercial establishment such as a Kirana store or a commercial office building can provide the electricity required for the individual EV charger. IEBS is similar to IEV in terms of the simple design. Only it is important to remember that in the case of IEBS, the facility requires to maintain the stock of spare batteries for swapping purpose. On the other hand, MEV refers to a charging facility where multiple electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers can be charged at the same time. This kind of facility can be set up in any parking area where adequate space is available to install the charging infrastructure. The unutilized land in urban areas, such as you can say space under flyovers, can also be a suitable location for this type of facility. And the electricity connection required for such facilities depends upon the number of vehicles that are targeted to be charged at the facility at the same time. And we believe that a new electricity connection would be required to set up such charging facility. Now coming to SBS, such facility can again cater to charging demands of multiple electric vehicles, but having swappable batteries, as Chandana mentioned in her slides. So like MEV, it can be set up at any location with a parking space or where there is some unutilized land. The major difference of SBS from MEV is that it requires less parking space, as the swapping operation only takes a few minutes. So, such facilities can be set up in a smaller spaces, not much parking area would be required. And also, like in case of MEV, the electricity requirement would depend upon the number of batteries that need to be charged at the facility at the same time. And mostly they would require a new or dedicated electricity connection. In our study, we have proposed a new type of facility which reportedly doesn't exist till now. That is the battery swapping only facility. Such facility offers swapping services without on-site battery charging, essentially serving as a dispenser of charged batteries. In this case, battery charging happens somewhere elsewhere actually. So this type of facilities are easier to establish, as they can be set up anywhere without the requirement of an electricity connection at the site. So during our study, we also conducted an online survey with the stakeholders to understand the relative preferences of fleet operators and charging service providers for these different types of charging or swapping facilities. Let me show some of the key results from that survey. From the survey results, it is evident that two-wheeler fleets, they prefer battery swapping and plug-in charging equally, as we can see. So this is two-wheeler logistics, this is two-wheeler passenger, and we can see that both plug-in charging and swapping options are equally preferred. The reasons for this fleet choice could be the different characteristics of the operating patterns. However, we see that there are more distinct preferences in the different segments of the three-wheeler fleets, this one and this one actually. So for passenger fleet in the three-wheeler segment, we find that battery swapping is preferred over plug-in charging, whereas in the case of logistics fleet, the reverse holds true. The reason is, for three-wheeler passenger fleets, the time taken to charge an EV is a lost opportunity to earn revenue, and hence it is logical that fleet operators prefer battery swapping, which takes less time. On the other hand, a logistics fleet operation can accommodate time for charging, as I mentioned in my previous slide. Also, the larger battery size and correspondingly higher weight of the batteries in the logistics vehicles becomes a big factor against battery swapping. Now, coming to the two-wheeler fleet preferences for different charging facilities. We find that logistics fleet prefer multiple EV charging facility over individual EV charging facilities, as we can see from the graph. On the other hand, passenger fleets show more preference for swapping solutions, particularly IBS actually. Now coming to the three-wheeler fleets, preferences of passenger and logistics fleets are quite different from one another. For passenger transport, the battery swapping options like SBS, IBS, and BSO constitute the top three preferred options, with the highest preference for SBS. In the case of logistics operations, there is a strong preference for plug-in charging options, actually, particularly MEV facilities, and the reasons I have already highlighted in my previous slides. So these are the key insights. So we find that electric two-wheelers prefer swapping and plug-in charging equally. Logistics fleet, particularly, they prefer MEV. In case of three-wheelers, passenger fleets clearly prefer swapping options, and logistics fleets show preference for MEV facility. So we find that the identified 5 types of public charging facilities has unique set of trade-offs, and the suitability of a facility for a particular fleet depends on how the advantages are leveraged in the fleet operations. Since the operational characteristics of these light electric vehicle fleets vary considerably, as we have mentioned, we feel that recommending a particular type of charging facility for all the fleets is not a useful exercise. Rather, we find that a multi-criteria based comparative assessment helps in making an informed decision to choose the type of charging facility. For this, we have identified 6 parameters and applied a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 being the highest or the best. In this assessment, I would like to mention that the BSO option, which is the battery swapping only option, has not been included, since this facility only performs the swapping operation, and therefore it's not comparable to actual charging facilities. So I mean, apple to apple comparison will not be possible. So these are the 6 parameters we have considered in the assessment, and this is the corresponding significance of 5. Would like to mention here that vehicle downtime considers only the downtime of an EV and does not include the time to recharge the battery if it is done outside the vehicle. Also, in the evaluation, we have kind of considered electricity cost as one of the parameters, and the scoring on this parameter has been done based on the tariff that would most likely be applicable to a given charging facility. So let's see the scores. As we can see, IEV scores quite high against infrastructure cost and ease of getting electricity connection due to its minimalist design. On the other hand, IBS offers major advantages with respect to significantly less vehicle downtime, low cost of space rental, and ease of getting connection due to its simple format actually. A key advantage of MEV we find is that it will be likely eligible for the special EV tariff in a state because it will have a dedicated electricity connection and metering. So that's how they can actually attract the special EV tariff. Now, one main advantage of SBS is its high probability to attract EV tariff, like in the case of MEV. Plus, it allows the energy operator to utilize TOD tariff, time of day tariff, by adjusting the battery charging Particularly, they can charge during the off-peak hours if such a TOD tariff is introduced for EV in that state. Obviously, it scores high on vehicle downtime. We also find that SBS offers great opportunity to achieve scale in terms of serving number of EVs. So these are the key insights. As I mentioned, that swapping-based charging facilities score high on vehicle downtime. Centralized facilities like multiple EV charging facility or stacked battery swapping facilities score low against space rental costs because they require more space to set up. IIV scores high on infrastructure cost due to the minimalist design, similar IBS also, but it would require spare batteries, so it may incur additional cost. Eligibility for EV tariff was considered in terms of scoring. So a facility which we find that it will be eligible for EV tariff, it is given higher score, and that's why MEV and SBS facilities which have dedicated connections are expected to get EV tariffs. So they have scored pretty high. And SBS, as I mentioned, they can benefit from the TOD tariffs. We find that IEV and IBS, in their cases, it is easy to draw power. And as I mentioned, that SBS potentially offers high scalability, but we find that IEV and IBS are also good scalable options. So as I conclude my presentation, I would like to highlight the major takeaways from our study. So to support rapid commercial adoption of light electric vehicles, we believe that proper planning of charging facility deployment is going to be critical. This research has mapped out the practices followed by the first movers in the market and identified the practicable solutions which can sustain the commercial adoption of light electric vehicles. The study understands that beyond the technical specifications of the batteries, the type of charging facility required is linked to the EV fleet's operational pattern. Decentralized charging or swapping solutions are found to be suitable for electric two-wheeler fleets. For electric three-wheeler passenger fleets, battery swapping is found to be an effective solution as it helps reduce vehicle downtime. However, downtime is not as much of an issue for logistics businesses as they have their own operational pattern that can naturally include such downtime and thus allows them to manage the fleets with plug-in charging solutions. As swapping becomes difficult with larger, heavier batteries, creative solutions such as using multiple battery packs of optimum weight should also be explored. Anyway, we find that uptake of a charging solution depends on how it can be utilized in the commercial fleet operation. We understand that lack of standardization in the design of chargers and batteries is a factor that will impact or hamper the rollout of charging facilities for these vehicle segments. And we believe that the need of the hour is to design and implement cost-effective, scalable, and homegrown charging solutions that can meet the charging requirements of these electric vehicles. And finally, we recommend that the decision to choose a charging solution should be based on multiple criteria. And the parameters considered for the multi-criteria evaluation should include, but not limited to, vehicle downtime, cost of space rental, infrastructure cost, electricity cost, ease of getting an electricity connection, and scalability. We hope that the stakeholders would find the findings of the study very practical and useful. We will keep this conversation going online. So polls, tips, mythbusters, and report insights, and much more you will find on AAA's Twitter handle @AAA_India. So do visit our Twitter page to participate and tell us what you think. So see you there. So now it is time to officially release the report. I would request Mr. Ruchir Shukla, Director of the Electric Mobility Program at Shakti, Dr. Satish Kumar, President and Executive Director of AAA, and my colleague Chandana to join me to launch the report.
Shamash, I want to ask all the panelists that we have today to come online as well.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
So this is the report. Let me just give you a look and feel of this report. So let me go straight to the table of contents actually. So this is the table of contents. As you can see that there is chapter definitely on the introduction. Then we have a chapter on the different vehicle segments. Then what is the current market landscape? Then we have discussed the charging methods, and there are a number of case studies which we have captured in our report, and based on which we have derived some of our findings or conclusions. Then we have talked about the different charging facilities which we have identified, the 5 charging facilities which I discussed, and then we have presented the key findings from the stakeholders survey, and then it comes to the multi-criteria assessment, and then there is this final thought. So, and also these sections are kind of dynamic, so one can directly go to a particular section by clicking here. So this is the section. So you will find all the details here. Some of them are captured in our report. Also, there are plenty of figures, so feel free to explore them. For example, we have these figures which Chandana presented today. So yeah, so this is the report we just launched actually. So what I would suggest that we can now go to the more exciting session, I would say, which is the panel discussion. So we have this panel discussion on the key findings. So we are fortunate to have Mr. Vivek Chandran as the moderator. So thank you, Vivek, for accepting our invite. Also, we are extremely, I would say, fortunate to have knowledgeable panelists with us today. So I would like to first welcome Ms. Ashwarya Raman, Associate Director, Ola Mobility Institute, Mr. Chandrasekhar Vide, co-founder of Lithium Power Private Limited, Mr. Kalpit Dubey, who is the Head of Business Strategy at DOT India, and Mr. Kartik Gogula, who is the Assistant Manager at Bounce. So it would be great if the panelists at the beginning of their talk can briefly mention about the salient features of the charging operations in their fleets or in their businesses. That would be great for the audience. So without further ado, I would request Vivek to start the session. So over to you, Vivek.
Thanks, Shamashish, and thanks to all the panelists for joining us today. So yeah, we are short on time, so I'm gonna start it off very quickly. So as Shamashish hinted, let's try and get to understand all your positions, all the panelists' positions clearly as we start. So I'm going to ask you to briefly cover what your organization works on in terms of electrifying two-wheelers, and what the value proposition is that you bring to that. Also, do highlight if your organization has any kind of electrification targets that you're internally trying to accomplish. That would be good for the audience to understand. And most importantly, the question to you is, what has your organization's main consideration been in terms of your choice of charging technology? So whether it be swapping or plug-in, and in terms of the battery, what have been your considerations? And of course, if you have any thoughts and reactions to what the presentation AAA has made right now, that would be good as well. So I'm asking for a bit, but let's see if we can wrap it up in 2 to 3 minutes, each participant. So I'm going to start with requesting Kalpit to respond first.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this panel discussion. And would like to congratulate AEEE and the other panelists on this report, the launch of this report. See, let me just take you to the briefly on DOT. So DOT is an entity which is primarily founded in 2015. It was founded with the idea of providing electric mobility to the last mile and the middle mile logistics. And that brings us here, because we are one of the largest two-wheeler and three-wheeler operators of EV operators of in the logistics space in India. If you look at the structuring part, the company is headquartered in Singapore. That's the global company. In India, we have an operating company, which is DOT India. Company named under Green Valley Energy Ventures. And then there is a manufacturing entity and a research entity, which we have called Leon's Electric. So we have both the ambits of electric mobility in sense we do operate them, and we also manufacture and research on them. So the research is primarily done on battery charging, vehicle design. So our learnings have gone into what sort of vehicles we use. We currently have a fleet of about 770 odd vehicles, primarily two-wheelers, and about 1/3 of them are three-wheelers. That being said, on the charging front, we, as probably you will see in the report, we have both fixed charging as well as swapping available in our fleet operations. As we work on a hub and spoke model, it is essential to have a plug-in charger. And the battery per se, because it is designed by our officer concern, is designed in a manner that we cater to the demands of the commercial operations. So in case of two-wheelers, our battery is designed to cater to the ranges of about 100+ kilometers on a daily charge, on other one charge, and have swapping facilities as well. So we do have swapping facilities. All these batteries are supported by fast charging. Fast charging again is primarily a proprietary charging which we use using supercapacitors. So again, it provides us the full charge in 2 hours, and about 45 minutes can give us a 55% charge. So this, this being said, those technologies remain same for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Charging time differs for their different capacities. Swapping is available for in our fleet. We do both for two-wheelers as well as three-wheelers. However, we don't use them extensively of late, simply because the maintenance cost is very high. It goes up to about 100% on the top of the existing maintenance. So we have basically refrained from using swapping off late about 6-7 months from now. That's primarily about charging. I would request if there's any other question, I'll do that later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Perhaps we could go to Mr. Chandrasekhar next. You are not audible. I think we may have some audio issues there. You're still unaudible. Maybe while we fix that,
okay, now I'm unmuted. Now I'm unmuted. Sorry, I was muted by the organizer. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Chandrasekhar. First of all, I would like to thank AEEE for this wonderful event. Quick background about lithium power. So we are a player who has got multiple business lines. One is, of course, on the smart connected components like battery management system, telemetry units, etc. And second is on the energy infrastructure. Okay, and we operate intelligent connected energy delivery platform, which is optimal, and this allows omni charging. So we have both charging and swapping solutions, and we have been commercially live since February 2018. Okay, and this is in the low to medium power electric vehicles, which is your electric rickshaws, autos, and electric two-wheelers. And we of course provide the hardware, but more importantly, what we provide is the embedded software, the user end software, the customer end software, which allows you to allocate or smartly match the energy requirements of any vehicle in a real time with the charged or charging batteries available at different locations. And this is all done real time. So That's briefly about lithium power.
Thank you very much. Karthik, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi everyone, and first of all, yeah, thanking AEEE and Shyamashish and Chandana for the insightful report and organizing this event. So briefly about Bounce. So Bounce is an two-wheeler rentals. Of course, it's not a regular two-wheeler rental, like a smart mobility option that we provide in terms cities of Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Vijayawada. So we currently have around 1,000 plus EV fleet in the total of around 20,000 bikes. And the commitment is that by 2023 or 2022, we should have all 100% of our fleet to be EVs. And we have signed up for that even for EV 100 campaign. And yeah, even we are planning to add more and the 2,000, 3,000 fleet of the EVs soon in the next upcoming months. And here I'm very happy to say that, till now, from 2019 to till now, I think the total number of kilometers traveled on EVs is around 13 lakh kilometers. So that's calculating to around, I think, 7.6 million kg of CO2 emission savings actually. So that's a real good feed that we have, and we are expecting more to happen soon. And in terms of charging facilities, so as in the report they clearly mentioned that we follow this battery swapping model, which is again very unique, like Kirana partners that we have. So because as Bounce, the bikes are spread across the city, and having a centralized model, charging somewhere and pulling it up onto the bike is very tough. And the bike, we don't want our bike to be idle more than 15-20 minutes, because that's the bike if idle, then we lose customers on that. So that's where we have tied up with almost around 300 to odd Kirana partners across the city, and we have identified few demand centers where these Kirana partners are there, and they do charging for us. And whenever there's a bike is on low battery, we'll get an intimation, and our on-ground team will take care of it. We'll just reach to the battery swapping station, and the battery will be swapped within a fraction of minutes. So that's the operating model in terms of battery swapping. And yeah, that's it from the Bounce. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. And Aishwarya, over to you.
Thanks, Vivek. Hello, everybody, and congratulations to AEEE and Shakti Foundation for this timely report. I am Aishwarya. I head research at the Ola Mobility Institute. We are a public policy research and social innovation think tank established by the rideshare platform Ola. We develop knowledge products at the intersection of mobility, innovation, and public good. For the last 1+ year, in fact, we've been studying the battery swapping space quite closely. Last year, we, along with other civil society organizations, as well as several businesses in the e-mobility space, developed India's first shared resolution on battery swapping, where we managed to list quite a few number of benefits related to users, energy operators, power sector and discoms, as well as the country as a whole when battery swapping is adopted. I'll just take a quick minute to talk about some of these benefits and then over to a discussion as well, if possible. So we know that a battery swapping regime allows us to decouple, de-link the battery from the electric vehicle, thereby reducing the upfront cost of the EV. This is important not just for an individual user such as myself who wishes to buy an EV, but also for fleet operators. So their upfront cost for fleet operators, individual users, as well as mobility service aggregators are all taken care of, are all addressed by adopting battery swapping. And which in turn allows you to decouple the battery from the electric vehicle. Second, like Karthik mentioned, as well as Chandana and Shyamashish in their presentation spoke about, we have a complete elimination of the downtime involved in charging in the case of battery swapping. This is all the more important for commercial drivers. Their remunerative opportunities go up if your refueling experience is as seamless, as comfortable, and as short as it is in the case of real fuel station experience. So that kind of a mimicking that battery swapping allows you to do is beneficial to fleet operators as well as all commercial vehicles in general. Three, I think what I'd like to emphasize a lot is the fact that the land costs come down significantly when you talk about battery swapping stations, right? And the productivity of the land also goes up. What do I mean by this? In a point charging scenario, you would need ample space for the vehicles to also be physically parked at your station, whereas a battery swapping station would require a fraction of the real estate otherwise required to set up a charging station. This means that in dense urban agglomerations, such as Indian cities, it makes all the more prudence to adopt battery swapping and have them come up in underutilized areas such as land under flyovers, parking lots, as well as in kirana stores, mom and pop stores, and whatnot. The productivity of land in the case of battery swapping also goes up. This is a research that is underway at OMI's end. We are hoping to publish the results pretty soon. So we see that a battery swapping station can cater to 3 to 5 times more the number of vehicles than the vehicles that the point charging station can cater to. So all these make battery swapping, sort of use battery swapping to make e-mobility more affordable for the end user. The EV cost goes down on the upfront level, and the access to energy also becomes more affordable to the end users. With that, back to you, Vivek.
Thanks, Aishwarya. So I'd like to go next to Kalpit because he has to leave soon. But the larger question to the panel here is this, and I'm going to touch upon the recent development that we have seen from MORTH, the advisory that we have received on the fact that now we can register vehicles, 2- and 3-wheeler vehicles, without the battery, right? So that's that barrier is now removed. And the question here is, to an extent, the study also hinted at it, that there are various types of batteries, various types of charging requirements that may come about based on what the OEM thinks is best. And to an extent, just raising voltages makes a lot of sense. So that's another aspect. So while we have this, this industry in flux, in terms of trying to figure out what might be the best technologies and how to move forward, how do you see this issue of standardization? Because standardization may be desirable because then you have a lot more comparable players and you have a lot more choice, and the market basically increases as a result of that. And fragmentation is, in that sense, going to keep us from moving forward and accelerating forward. So how do you see this, this dilemma playing out? So maybe the first question is to, so this question is to Kalpit. And you could be specific to your operations as well, in terms of how you see this.
So that's a very nice question. I'm just going to talk about ourselves. We are not very firm believer of standardization, especially when the whole industry is innovative. Right now, we are in the phase which is very nascent in terms of innovation. So standardization per se will put up one barrier, and that is what we don't want. So that's the reason we have seen that we have been experimenting with. We are the first one to experiment with 32-volt two-wheeler. We are the first one to experiment with 72-volt three-wheeler. We are the first one to experiment now with the 96-volt three-wheeler, and also developing a 4-wheel platform for commercial as well as passenger usage on 96-volt. All of those, those are only coming in because we can innovate. Once the standardization comes in, probably the whole idea of innovation will take a backseat, and then people will have to align their plans and their the design and the development and the project accordingly. Also, from the point of view of swapping, from our perspective, the swapping actually is a very essential part of electric mobility ecosystem. But I'm gonna stick to one thing which we have discussed with the AEEE team and almost all the forums which we have been, that it's going to be limited to a two-wheeler segment. Any segment above two-wheeler, other than three-wheeler, the cost of maintenance goes up drastically, and we have data to prove that. So the cost of maintenance in our case went up by 100%, and 100% increase in cost of maintenance does not give us a good bottom line to us. We are a bottom line driven company. We are not top line heavy. We basically work on only profitability. So for us, if our maintenance cost is not known to us, if our cost, the factors are not known to us, we struggle. And that's the reason why we intend to have a battery and a charging solution, which gives us the ranges which are required, essential for our daily operation. And we do a 1.5 charging shifts, which happen during overnight charging, just slow charging, and then we have a cash charge of about an hour and a half in the afternoon when complete idle. That's usually how that's the use for us.
Thank you, Kalpit. That's kind of interesting to. Thank you. It's interesting to learn that you're talking about the costs with three-wheelers and that shooting up to almost 100%. Can you give us some insight on what's happening there?
Yeah. So there are three contacts which get damaged once you do the swapping, and that's where the cost goes up. It shoots up drastically, and especially the manpower per se is not highly trained to tackle that. And we cannot have one guy doing, probably two guys doing the shift throughout the week. So these guys are changed constantly, and usually drivers are trained to swap. And then the connectors goes up. The connectors can cost anywhere between 50 to 100 to 100 rupees. And then there are issues in terms of casing getting damaged, in terms of wiring getting damaged for the vehicle itself. So there are a lot of provisions which have to be done primarily on the maintenance side, and then you have to keep the spares and stuff. There's an inventory cost to that as well. So then there are many things which are not which are not desirable in a commercial operation. So that's the reason we do swap in some cases, especially in Gurgaon. But the rest of our operations in the other hubs, around 20 odd hubs, are not swapping. And we would look at once we have a solution which is much cheaper in terms of the maintenance.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, and thanks for coming to the panel discussion and being part of this and sharing your insights. It's been very, very useful. I will move on to ask the similar question to Chandrasekhar, because I think he's going to be the next one who is impacted by this. Because again, fragmentation for him would mean having to cater to several kinds of batteries, which is not going to be easy. So Chandrasekhar, what is your take on the MRTH guidelines, and how do you see this going forward in terms of your business?
Okay, so we think it is a good move. Okay, standardization of course helps, as in there are, as in you would have seen, there are multiple OEMs each trying to do different things differently, right? And having a shared open system benefits everybody in the ecosystem. Okay, and when I say standards, it need not be limited only to the hardware or the external form factor of it. Okay, most people think about battery standardization, then they suddenly want to talk about the size and about the technical characteristics. But the more important thing is, which is purely from a swapping point of view, is that you need to be able to get real-time data about the technical state of affairs in the battery. Right, external form factors could be slightly here and there, as long as the connectors are the same. Right, analogy could be your LPG gas cylinders. Now there is a red LPG gas cylinder, a blue LPG gas cylinder, a half-size LPG gas cylinder, right? And it doesn't matter much, because the connector and the regulator at the cylinder end and the connector at the stove end is standardized, right? See, a battery is just a storage for energy, right? What matters is the energy. And what you should be able to do is understand real time what is, for example, the individual cell voltages, the current being drawn, the capacity left, all those kind of technical parameters. And that could be independent of the physical form factor of the battery. Yes, physical form factor standardization helps, but more importantly, in a real-time swapping kind of a scenario, you need to be able to get all these details in a programmatic automated manner. Now for that, the communication protocols, the parameters, the format of those parameters, the frequency of sending those parameters, etc., the communication protocol, all needs to be standardized. As in, there are enough standardized protocols for communication, for example, but the different ecosystem players need to agree on 1-2 of them, right? If everybody were to try to create their own closed loop ecosystem, then it is probably not the best outcome for the industry as a whole. While it might work beautifully well for those closed ecosystem partners, but if you have a standardization, then the overall cost of the network goes down. You have more points to go and get your services, be it a bad charging or a swapping or whatever, right? So we believe that right now 2 things could happen. Some of these entities, some of these ecosystem players who are pro standardization would want to tie up with other partners who have similar mindset, and they might get into a preferred kind of a partnership, probably in an exclusive manner. Okay, now that could help if these guys are the industry leaders, but if they are not, then probably it is not going to work out that well for them, right? Second is, there might be some common industry bodies or potentially some government supported departments which will try to come up with a set of standards, could be on the technical side, could be on the process side, which will actually help this industry as a whole. And also we need to understand that even though the advisory says that the batteries are now decoupled from the vehicles, it is not mandatory yet. So you can still buy a vehicle which comes with a fixed set battery, right? It is going to take some time for people, including the end customers, to open up to this idea that yes, it works out in their favor, and that will take some time. So right now, as in, I welcome this move. Okay, it is going to be beneficial for us because we work with multiple OEMs, we work with multiple battery pack manufacturers, we work with multiple fleet managers. So for us, as in, nobody is a competition. We can work with anybody because we are not so much, we of course have solutions on the infrastructure hardware side, but our focus is more on the embedded side, on the data side, on the software side, and on the real-time communication. So that is where our focus is.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Before I go to Aishwarya, I'll probably go to you last because I'll go to Karthik, and because Bounce has done something interesting, which is to solve this problem, just have their own vehicles now. So how are you? Is that what's going to be the format for Bounce going forward? That you standardize at the level of the vehicle itself, that you basically own the vehicle completely from the design stage? Or when you start thinking of expansion, you will probably want to bring in other vehicles. What is your thinking there? And again, reflections on the mod notification.
Yeah, Vivek. So whatever the permission that was given to purchase the vehicles without battery is most welcomed by Bounce, because we believe in the floating model. And when we set up these Kirana partners, in long term, we intend that these Kirana partners can act as a battery swapping station even for the private player, like the individuals, not like only for the Bounce or only for the XYZ player. But because once a private individual has believed that there are enough battery swapping stations across the city, like how there are petrol bunks now across the city, now they will be mostly encouraged to buy a vehicle because the initial investment comes down drastically, and they will be buying vehicle without a battery, and they use this battery just whenever they need the charge. So just they pay whenever how you go for the petrol bunk, you pay just when you pay for petrol, not like for setting up the bunk, but this is like same like that. So the model is that is the long-term plan for the Bounce to set up these battery swapping stations, and currently we are being used by Bounce itself, but in long term that will be used by the individuals. And when we go to the form factor, yeah, we want to follow the same model, like we purchase the bikes and then we have these floating model batteries. And again, still there's missing pieces that we see in terms of promoting battery swapping. Like for example, even though government is allowing the vehicles without batteries, but when we go for floating model, we need to have excess number of batteries than the number of vehicles. That means we need to purchase separate batteries. But still the GST, for example, is like little high compared, it's like almost 18%. So that's again adds cost to us. And also the EV tariff, which is not really applicable to the battery swapping stations yet. even though they are recognized battery swapping stations, but EV tariff, to get that EV tariff separate meter and everything for the Kirana partner, which we are tying up, is very tough in terms of on-ground operations. So these are some missing pieces for which has to happen. Maybe slowly will happen. We are expecting that it will happen soon after this, particular policy recommendations. Yeah, Vivek. So that's the plan.
Fair enough. Thank you, Karthik. Over to you, Aishwarya. Ola has been active in this space, especially in getting this advisory out and getting some clarification around it. So it'll be great to hear from you on what you see as being unlocked by this, as well as what may be further challenges.
Absolutely. So at OMI, we obviously welcome the policy developments over the last couple of months, in fact. So we start back in June when the Ministry of Power recognized battery swapping, afforded legal recognition to battery swapping by including it as part of the charging guidelines at its end. And then within months and in the run-up to the Independence Day, we obviously had the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways allowing us to sell and register vehicles without leaf-fitted batteries. Both these form a game changer, an inflection point in India's EV transition. This I would like to tie in with the earlier point that I was making, which is that we need to make EVs affordable for all. We need to make access to energy as well extremely affordable for everybody. Otherwise, for a price-sensitive market such as India, and also a market that is dominated by electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers, the transition to EVs is going to be extremely hard. We've seen how in other markets, withdrawal of incentives immediately slowed down the uptake in EVs, and you do not want that kind of a model replicated in India's transition journey as well. Second, when it comes to standardizations, we need to understand what we are standardizing and for what purpose, right? So if standardization in the context of battery swapping is to drive interoperability as well as safety, then let us look at what aspects of the battery would you like to standardize. So if I talk about safety and interoperability, I then agree with what Chandrasekhar and we also had Kalpit speak about, which is that we could start with standardizing a communication protocol, allowing the battery to be interoperable, interchangeable at the charging stations end as well as at the vehicle's end. On the safety front, I'd like to introduce a comment or two on battery voltages. This is because we know that heavier batteries have a higher voltage requirement, but battery swapping allows innovation, allows you to innovate and allows you to reduce the battery size, battery capacity, while making batteries all the more powerful. This means that we can actually stick with a 48-volt voltage requirement and standardize at this level, simply because a lot of the battery swapping experiments also have modular battery packs of smaller sizes that are used in two-wheelers and three-wheeler cases. This also becomes important because in a swapping environment, batteries are manually handled, and you cannot have batteries at higher volt handled by individuals lest there be any safety related incidents. So keeping these in mind, we should certainly look at perhaps voltage regulations as well as communication protocol in order to ensure that battery swapping as a whole is both safe and interoperable. The last comment would be, keep in mind that innovation is key. This is still a market that is in its nascent stage. We are seeing the promise of battery swapping in making batteries smaller in size. At the same time, they are becoming more powerful. Therefore, let us not introduce any standards around physical dimensions of the battery pack, because that would then restrict the kind of energy you can extract from the battery. It will also restrict the kind of cells that go into the battery pack as well. So these are, again, factors we should consider while we are thinking about standards, I feel.
Got it. Thanks so much. I think these were interesting insights from the panelists on the issue. Unfortunately, we are over time. So I would like to end with one question for you. And we could go through this very quickly, 1 minute at most for each of you. So what do you see in your segments, at least? When do you see full electrification as a possibility? And you want to slice that as urban only because that's where most of your operations are. That's fine. But if you think there's a difference between urban and rural, it'll be good to see what your insights are on that and whether you're looking at expanding into rural areas as well. And lastly, what is your one policy requirement around this space that still goes unmet? So probably I'll start with Karthik and then work backwards towards Aishwarya.
Yeah, Vivek. So as I mentioned before, our commitment is for 100% EV. That actually we signed up for EV100. It is like target is 2030, and we can't wait till then. So we are focusing by 2023. All our fleet is EV. And because the one factor is only other than the climate change and other things, the major impact is on the unit cost economics. That works for us very better than a petrol engine. EVs are much better to handle in terms of all of the vandalism and fuel theft, etc., because bikes are on the road most of the time. So in that case, EVs are very much beneficial for us in terms of ease of operations, in terms of unit economics, and again impacting the whole climate as a factor. And when it goes to the tier 2, tier 3 cities, yeah, we are planning to expand to all the tier 2 cities. We are actually operating in few tier 2 cities. Again, same like we want to follow the Kirana model as such, because that brings us two things. One is, again, they do some job for us and we pay them on whatever they do, and the vehicle safety, which they take care of, and asset safety basically. So these two things we plan to follow the same model in other tier 2, tier 3 cities. Yeah, the target is 2023 to make all EV 100% EV. Yeah.
Great, thanks Karthik. Chandrasekhar?
Yeah, so I'll be more pragmatic in my approach. Okay, as in, yes, earlier the government had made forward-looking statements about when they want to achieve 100% EV only kind of a state. But for EV you need to have electricity, right? So only when 100% electrification at the domestic level has been achieved, then you can potentially talk about 100% EV. Having said that, 100% is a goal, is an aspiration, but we should be somewhere close in the next 5 years. Okay, and again, there will be a lot of players who will come into this space, as in you rightly mentioned about urban versus rural, right? So depending on individual businesses, business plans and aspirations, as in the coverage will vary. But if I were to hazard a guess, probably in the next 5 years we'll probably reach around 70% to 75% electrification, and this is at a reasonable pragmatic level. Aspirationally, yes, we would want to achieve 100% as quickly as possible.
Fair enough. I think that's worthwhile. Any actually, I missed this question on Karthik as well, but any policy demand that you would see that can make a big difference?
Yeah, right. So as I mentioned again, the policies are two things. One is the battery EV tariff that is actually costing us a lot, because when we go to an Kirana, it has been charged a commercial rate, which is the commercial rate is around 9 to 10 rupees in cities like in Bangalore, when operation at the Hyderabad. So when we pay for the charge, that means for energy, it is costing us very much high. And again, that actually calculates to the user. So that means we're not able to provide affordable mobility to the user, because again, we are spending too much money on the charge. So that is if that EV tariff and that regulation or policy, something would have been much clear to us in terms of including the battery swapping stations applicable for the subsidy of EV tariff. I think that will benefit us a lot.
Got it. Chandrasekhar, just quickly, if you could answer that question as well.
Okay, so yes, subsidies will help, but what will also help the ecosystem, especially the players who are actually providing a lot of these core technology components, will be the reduction in the import duties. Okay, some kind of more favorable policies from a taxation or from a deferment of liabilities, or some kind of funding policies which will benefit the ecosystem players. See, everybody is now looking at the end customer. Yes, and if registration fees are waived off, it is great. But there are multiple entities who have worked in this value ecosystem to bring that end customer that particular product, right? And for them, if they are importing stuff, key stuff which is not manufactured in India at 28%, then it is not probably fair.
Got it.
So what I would request is relooking at the import taxes, probably look at the those kind of things.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Aishwarya, over to you. And I
Yes.
see Kalpit has joined, so maybe we'll go last to Kalpit. Yeah.
So let me begin with the second question on the policy ask. So just to add to what Chandrasekhar and Karthik have already mentioned, I think a GST subvention on battery swapping and charging services is also due, given that the EVs with batteries have attract a GST rate of 5%, it makes sense to hold all the other aspects of e-mobility at par. Therefore, having the charging and battery swapping services also at GST of 5% would make sense and would also sort of boost the EV adoption in the country. In terms of India's electrification dreams and what is possible in the coming years, it would perhaps be interesting to see what impact the dual health cum economic crisis of COVID-19 has had on the industry as well. Globally, we are seeing that the car market has shrunk by 23%, whereas the electric mobility market seems to have been extremely resilient despite the pandemic. So globally, we have electric two-wheelers that have seen a huge uptake. In India too, this is true. Out of the 1.56 lakh electric vehicles that were sold in 2019-20, 1.52 lakh, 97% of them were electric two-wheelers, and the electric two-wheeler sales also saw a 20% growth in the last 1 year despite the pandemic. So I'm very optimistic about two-wheelers and three-wheelers being at the vanguard of India's transition to EVs, with a majority of these vehicles also finding use in both urban as well as rural areas. I definitely see that by 2030, a majority of at least two-wheelers and three-wheelers would go electric. Globally too, we are expecting 40 to 50% electrification of two-wheelers in this period. Perhaps India could actually push this even further.
Great, wonderful. Thanks, Aishwarya. And lastly, let's go to Kalpit. Thanks for joining us. So the question here was, what is the earliest that you think in your segment? So this might be in terms of rate. When do you think two-wheelers and three-wheelers in that space can be electrified across the segments? So not just your operations, but also is there one policy demand that you have that can make the biggest difference?
Right. So especially in our case, when we talk about logistics, the cost of ownership is in the cost of operations is already lower. So we have an added advantage that we have attained that levels where the cost for operating at a three or two-wheeler electric is actually lower than its ICE counterpart. So electrification per se has a huge incentive for not only us as an operator, as to the end client, wherein the logistics cost will go down, and all that will probably be translated back to the end user and also the environment. So it has it has multiple advantages. The only constraint here is the financing part of it, because we are into commercial operations. As of now, there is no policy to finance fleets. So it's the individual vehicles get financed, and that's where the companies like us struggle. We want to go to the to the regular banks and the financial institutions, but we end up going to the leasing companies or NBFCs, which charge much higher interest rates. So on a policy front, what I believe it's more important is to understand how the financing of these vehicles will look like. The same actually happened with with the ICE vehicles. The only once the policy was opened in terms of the financing in 90s, you saw the big budge in terms of the demand for for the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or four-wheelers in the ICE during the ICE age, when when the ICE vehicles were growing rapidly, and they still are, simply because that policy still exists. So what we want is a policy intervention in terms of creating a special electric vehicle refinancing or financing company, something like that. If that can happen from the from either finance ministry or under DHI, or which can have various stakeholders from the financial institutions like major banks, private banks, NBFCs, offering offering, if not discounted, at least at par rates with the ICE vehicles, so that we can compete there. That's what what we're looking at. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you. I think these are worthwhile points. Thanks everyone for contributing your insights from your experience. This has been useful for us, for all of us. And I think having said that, I will hand it over to Shyamashish and Chandana to wrap up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vivek. Thanks a lot, Vivek, and the panelists for an insightful discussion. Thanks a lot. As we conclude today's launch program, I would like to mention that AEEE is going to release another important report very shortly. It is on the interlinkages between power utility and electric mobility. So stay tuned. So at the end, on behalf of AEEE, would like to thank Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, particularly Ruchi and Vivek for their kind support and guidance. And finally, my gratitude to the audience for finding time to join today's program. So stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
And